Good morning, it's Carolyn here from Waiheke Island down under in New Zealand. I'm out walking in the native bush again, and today I'm going to be, wow, look at that, don't you love that? Do you know what that is? If you follow these videos, you'll learn how to identify what that tree is just by that visual that you can see there. Pretty cool, isn't it? I'll just go up and give you an idea of how big it is. So you can see it's pretty big, right? Those are bigger than my hand. That's a monster. That's a monster. So this video isn't about that tree today. It's going to be about what the 1% are talking about. And I'm not meaning the 1% of money owners or gold owners, but they're probably talking about some of the sort of things but in their field. So they're looking at mitigating their risk going forward, hedging to make sure they're okay. So the top 1% of gardeners talk about what's going on in the plant world, and I'll tell you, just to put this into context, say 10 years ago I would have been talking about how to cut a ball shape into a Ficus hillii up in Ponsonby, and then about 3 years ago that changed, and we started talking more about raw materials. So today I'm going to talk about raw materials, and I'll give you one example. You might be thinking, what is she talking about, raw materials? So we're talking about the raw plant materials that we use in New Zealand, the things that we make, what we use out of, and whether or not they're imported, whether or not they could be disrupted, whether or not we need them. Do we need to be concerned about them? And if so, what can we do about it? What do we need to do? I'm just going to give you an example of one plant. Have you heard of Echinacea? Most people have. It's commonly sold here in the pharmacies as, I'll call it a well-being plant, and it's sold in a tincture. It's really popular, and it's made with the plant Echinacea. Sometimes Echinacea purpurea, sometimes Echinacea angustifolia, or a combination of the two. I'm going to try not to slip over here because I'm going down the hill and it's quite wet. And that tincture with Echinacea in it is made in New Zealand, and by New Zealand companies, and you might be thinking, oh well, why are they even worried about it? You can just go and get it from your pharmacy. So what you need to realise is that made in New Zealand really just means constructed in New Zealand. So it's put together here in New Zealand. It's not necessarily all New Zealand products. And the Echinacea in those is not grown in New Zealand. The raw material, that's the raw material I'm talking about, is the Echinacea is not grown in New Zealand. It's grown in other countries and imported. And you're thinking, well, why aren't we growing it here? Well, we're not growing it here because we can't compete with the importers on that product. You wouldn't even be able to make a living. Even if you wanted to do it commercially, it's not grown commercially. So this is something that concerns us. And just to put into context about how important I think Echinacea is as a plant, if I had to pack a bag to escape to Mars with Elon Musk in his space car, I would have Echinacea seeds and Echinacea roots in that bag. So this is really critical to what we use in this country. Look at this, New Zealand Day, you've got steps through the bush. People wouldn't believe that. But yeah, we make it pretty easy for anyone to get through these sort of tracks. Look at it, it's beautiful, isn't it? New Zealand is a subtropical jungle, but we refer to it as the bush. So that's just a little bit of an insight about what the top 1% of gardeners are talking about at the moment. And one of the things is Echinacea and raw products. And you might be thinking, well, what's she done about it? Well, I'll tell you what I've done about it. Do you think that we don't have our own Echinacea now? Do you think that we weren't buying Echinacea seeds and making sure we knew how to grow that? A lot of people were out just, raiding the king's seeds and trying to panic and get what they needed, but we were already well ahead of them, and we're growing Echinacea and already saving our own seeds and storing our own root. So this is where you can be. You can be in the top 1%, and you'll learn about Echinacea. It's one of the my favourite plants, and it's one that you'll learn how to grow, you'll learn how to identify it, you'll learn about how to collect the root, etc. Because that's all part of being a plant person, and those skills transfer over to the collection of many plants. So this is where it kind of expands, and it's kind of an exponential rate. Small amounts of knowledge can be really valuable. Right, this is where I need to decide which way to go, and maybe it's not even on the path. So tune in next week when I talk more about, what the top 1% are talking about.